We're joined now by Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. All right, Congresswoman, what did you make of the president's speech tonight?
You know, I thought it was a pretty divisive and hateful speech, in spite of the fact that the president started out with a lot of empty promises and a whole lot of pandering, and claims that he wanted to bring us together in a bipartisan spirit of cooperation. I heard nothing that sounded remotely like a bipartisan spirit of cooperation. Essentially, he said he wants to continue the blanching of America. The kind of immigration policy he's proposing would tear families apart. It would use our dreamers as ransom to end decades and decades of immigration policy that allows people to bring their families together and keep families whole. It's unacceptable.
Are you confident that there'd be some type of deal reached by March 5th?
Well, as an appropriator, I'm certainly hoping that we will. But you know, the president's claims that what we really need to focus on is taking the sequester and the caps off of only defense, and doesn't even mention domestic programs, is grossly irresponsible. I am absolutely for a strong defense, and we need to make sure that we can adequately fund our military. We have to adequately fund the entire government, and for him to exclusively focus on removing the sequester and a budget deal that would be a year-long budget for defense and keep the sequester and possibly continue with CRs for the rest of the domestic budget would hurt millions of people.
You know, Congresswoman, we were joking before we filmed this segment just about how we had done an interview like this
right.
literally about a year ago during the president's joint address to Congress. So much has happened in the past year.
True.
And you said that you heard nothing in there about bipartisanship. Is there any area that you heard tonight, maybe on infrastructure, for example, that you think potentially there'd be some type of common ground left and the right?
I mean, we'll see what they propose. You know, we've got a president that proposed a $55 billion cut to infrastructure in his budget last year, so it's hard to believe him when he says he wants to spend over $1 trillion on infrastructure. But let's see, and I'm certainly willing to hear him out. And I was glad that he at least mentioned that he supports paid family leave. Didn't have any, specifics behind that statement. What was also troubling was that he seemed to spend a lot of time on alternative facts when it comes to the economy, because we've actually had the slowest rate of job growth in the last year since 2010.
What about lowering prescription drugs? That wasn't necessarily one of the points that the White House, when we were talking to the White House, put forward. And a lot
you know what? We have an opportunity that Republicans have consistently opposed. I hope President Trump embraces allowing the federal government to negotiate with prescription drug companies for lower prices. That is a specific prohibition in the Medicare Part D program, for example, that they inserted in the law they wrote, and I hope the president supports repealing it, and so that we can allow the federal government to negotiate for lower prescription drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry, just like we do at the VA.
My final question for you, just taking a step back, would be, the White House was saying this was going to be a more unifying speech, a different tone. Sounds like that's not what you heard.
It's certainly not remotely what I heard. I mean, what I heard was a president who seems to want to, as I said, blanch America. He wants to close down, access to the United States and no longer have us be a beacon of hope and allow people to come here who are fleeing oppression. That would mean that we would snuff out the light that America has always been to the world. And I as a grandchild of immigrants to this country who fled oppression, I find that wholly unacceptable, immoral, and the antithesis of the values that I was raised to believe in we have in America.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, we thank you for coming.
Always
on
a
Bloomberg.
pleasure.